Okay. You guys are rolling, and also terrific. And let's get started. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to be discussing the future of work, which is a subject that nobody knows the answer to, not even us. And it's getting more confusing as every day goes by, but we're going to explore it and go through it. I would like you to understand that these sessions are being provided by the IMCCA, the Interactive Multimedia and Collaborative Communications Alliance. We have a booth all the way at the other far end of the hall. It's free to join. It's the nonprofit organization that represents collaborative communications. You can always find it at imcca.org. Good organization. We do a lot of educational sessions like this. Please join us and look into what we do. My name is David Danto. This is the 46th year that I'm trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. I've done a lot of things through my career as an end user, as a consultant on the sell side, and now as an independent analyst with a company called TalkingPointz with a Z, TalkingPointz.com, and please take a look at what we do there, and by all means reach out if I can ever help you with anything. So let's talk about the subject. I have about 50 slides that I'm going to get through in about a minute and a half because I want to save time for my panelists to discuss the subject. You guys have all heard the parable of the frog in a pot of boiling water. The boiling happens so slowly that they don't realize what's happening until it's kind of too late. We're sort of in that situation right now with what happened to us before and after the pandemic. Things have changed and not everybody has realized the change. Everybody understands what we lived through, and you've heard the quotes from a number of people about experiencing years of change and evolution in months. And now, with it thankfully being over, we've seen a lot of terms that we're talking about: magnet, not mandate, quiet quitting, hoteling, meeting equity. There's a lot of new things that we don't necessarily understand, and we're trying to figure it out. And what we've experienced can best be described as a tug of war between what was and what's going to be that we're experiencing right now. Knowledge workers want to have better experiences working. They don't want to commute for 2 hours to sit at a desk and do something that they're able to do at home and not have to do the commute. Leaders generally, and not every company falls into this, but many leaders want to return to what was before. They like the organization and the structure and the standard office. Now, there are reasons why that old return to office is not something that ever really is going to happen. Part of the problem is that other priorities have replaced work in people's lives and livelihoods. Family life, caregivers, spending time, being emotionally well. Life is too short to be spending most of your time commuting to an office. Part of the problem is, company leaders are sometimes looking at this through rose-colored glasses. Companies didn't always have everybody in the same office at the same time. I'm going back into my decades of history, and I've always worked in offices where there were distributed people in other cities. We weren't all in the same place. We were all working in different places. So the idea of returning to something that never actually existed is a little bit surprising. Part of the problem is also, this is just an undefined situation. Nobody really understands what's happening, and everybody's just kind of stabbing in the dark to get through it. And one of the things that you should realize that I'd like to point out to you is that what we're debating isn't necessarily what you think we're debating in many cases. This is a New York Times story about a building in Manhattan that just sold for 97.5% less than its last value. Instead of the last time it was sold for $332 million, it just sold on an online auction for $8.5 million. A lot of what we're talking about isn't the office dynamic and returning to offices. It's the real estate market and what's happening in terms of the valuation of real estate and what that's going to do over the next few years. A lot of companies have tried to say, well, you know what? I don't care about the rest of the stuff. We want you back in your desk anyway. Return to office. If you don't come back to your office, you're not going to be promoted. Large computer company tried that, and ultimately, it didn't work. People didn't care. They said, I don't care if I'm going to get promoted or not. I'd rather make sure that I can spend time with my family and be productive at home. So it's not always working. And we've been debating these subjects for at least the last 5 years. whether, you can look at, somebody online like a Nick Bloom, who's very much of an advocate for remote work, or you can look online and see people that go in the other directions, read the business publications. It's kind of a strange debate, and it hasn't really changed. And then you have, real estate companies that are arguing both sides of this. They're managing corporate properties, but they're also saying they're the experts in hybrid work. So this is a completely undefined situation, and that's one of the things we're going to talk to our panelists about. We have to acknowledge the change before we get into the details. What's changed about offices, as opposed to individual working at desks, it's now group work and collaborative work. That's the point of the office. Low number of expensive meeting rooms has translated into a high number of inexpensive meeting rooms. Every meeting has got a remote participant, so every meeting needs to have the ability to support remote participants. Instead of densification, which I lived through, they weren't even cubicles anymore. They were long rows of desks where you had to sit bunched up next to your colleague. Nobody wants to sit next to anybody anymore for getting, fear of getting the virus. Now we're all talking about hoteling and touchdown desks and how do you select a desk. Technology used to be the kind of thing we would slap into the room at the 11th hour. That was the AV person's job. Run the wire, tape it up, get it up on the wall, make sure you're hiding the cables and you're done. Now technology needs to be inherent as part of the design, part of the plan, built in. Management by walking around is gone because you can't see people if they're not in the offices. And simple, plain layouts have changed into beautiful, inspiring offices. You want your office to be a place that you enjoy going to, that people want to be there. Is there natural light? Are there natural fibers? Is the technology working? Is it embedded? Is it thought of? So these are the major changes about offices that our panelists and I are going to discuss. The genie's not going back into the bottle. No matter which side of this you're on, we're not all going to be working from home, and we're not all going to be working in an office. So there's a checklist about the idea that one size doesn't fit all, workplaces that inspire, utilizing modern technology in every space, making sure that you're cloud-based with new cloud-based platforms, making sure that you're training your managers so they understand how to manage a hybrid workforce, and then resetting hybrid expectations. It's not I'm home or I'm in the office. It's an and. It's when are we going to be with our colleagues and what's the reason for it? Why did I commute in today versus when am I going to work from home because I'm doing quiet work that I can do better at my personal desk in my home office. So that sets the stage. I want my panelists to introduce themselves quickly, and then we're going to ask some questions. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand. I'd love to get your questions as well. But Mitch, why don't we start with you down at the end? Just give us a minute or two of who you are and what you do in the industry.
Good afternoon. My name's Mitchell Hershkowitz. I work for Canon USA as a business development manager. My focus is actually on working with existing Canon customers and kind of changing the perception. Canon's known for office equipment like printers and scanners and copiers, but they also sell pan-tilt zoom cameras, PTZ cameras. So they're trying to kind of work with the organizations like you'll hear from in a moment on the stage here to see how they can also get into that collaboration space and how they can add value to the space as well. So thank you.
Joel?
My name's Joel Mulpeter. I'm the Director of Product Marketing for Crestron, focusing mainly on the commercial products, but really me and my team take anything that our wonderful engineers and product managers make and turn that into something that we can wrap a message around and really focus on what that product solves out in the market. So trade events, all the content that ends up on our website, everything we do from a outward facing comes from through my team.
And Joel, you're here on the floor, right? You can ping me over to the Crestron.
We are, yeah. We're at the front of the booth here, right up pretty much as you walk in the door.
Thank you. Katie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Macfarlane. I'm a sales leader at Cisco in our collaboration space. And so my team specifically focuses on the Cisco device endpoint. So the devices that go in your conference room or in your home office, that's kind of what my team works with our large enterprise customers.
Thank you. Amelia?
Hi, my name is Amelia Vrabel, and I'm with QSys. I'm on our Alliances go-to-market manager. We focus very heavily on the experience of some of these spaces and what we call high-impact spaces, where we can really bring people together in very collaborative experiences. And I work along with many of our software platforms and other hardware alliance partners to really kind of develop that full space for us.
So in your roles, individually, what you do, you're interacting with customers. You have that experience out in the field, you see what they're doing, you see what's going on. So let's each of you take like a minute or a minute and a half or so, and I'll start at this end and move down. What are you seeing in this return to office, no, I want to be hybrid, in this tug of war? What are you seeing from the customers that you're dealing with? Amelia?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing a lot of things. I think, you know, there's an acknowledgement, right, that the offices that existed 5 years ago may not be, you know, conducive to the type of work they need to do today. I think, as we've talked about before, if we're going to bring people back into an office, there has to be a reason. I mean, I hate driving. I don't want to drive anywhere, and I certainly don't want to drive 30 minutes somewhere to sit at a desk and be on a Zoom call. So if I'm going to come together, and there is certainly, you know, value in bringing people together for various activities, you know, they want to be able to have spaces that are conducive to those activities, and trying to figure out, like, what makes those spaces places people want to come to, and having a lot of that experience built into those spaces.
Thank you. Katie, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I would say, just from the enterprise customers that I'm talking to on a daily basis, we have some customers that had a very traditional in-office experience before the pandemic, and they've been really struggling to get people to come back. And so we started initially, as people were slowly coming back to the office, we had companies that were giving mandates of, you have to be in the office, or you have to be in the office on certain specific days. And then we had people say, hey, go to the office when you want to go to the office, don't when you don't. And so I feel like we see still a mix today of that. And what our customers are really struggling, that had that culture of the in-office, they're struggling, how do we find that culture and get people to want to come back? And so, you know, whether it's a hybrid approach or specific days of the week, it's all over the board.
Joel?
Yeah, I think we're seeing, I mean, two main things happen is the reorganization of what the office is, like the types of spaces, how many you need, and where you need them to be is changing quite rapidly. But it is driving towards that need for people to come in and collaborate, and a little bit less for the individual work. That can be done in other locations these days, but the collaboration, especially the in-person collaboration, is obviously on an increase. That's why people come into the office. But we're also saying, obviously, more spaces need to now be, you know, video or UC enabled in some sort of way. That is an increase, you know, pre-COVID as well, but definitely post-COVID, and seems to be continuing to accelerate, is getting things like UC into spaces like town halls and big open spaces that maybe before wouldn't have been considered for that. That seems to be a big trend we're seeing.
Yeah, and in addition to what everyone said, what I'm seeing is a lot of reaction. People are reacting to what they think is either a problem or a solution. So if the organization's numbers were down this past year, profits were down, that means too many people working from home, let's bring them back to the office. So we're seeing the executives mandating, okay, come back to the office, and they're not even giving that choice of, you pick the 3 days. They're saying come Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Or the reverse. People are working from home, people like it. So let's start shutting down offices. Let's start consolidating our real estate and keep it home. That may be the right response. It may not be the right response. So I'd hope that, and we're going to talk about some of this today, but I'd hope that those executives are working with the people and culture and the human and resources department, as well as those individual departments, those business units, to really understand what the needs are and what that organization really wants, as Katie said before, to help develop that culture.
All right, so this is a quick question with a quick answer. I want you guys to give me a percentage. Okay, think of all the customers you're dealing with, all the companies that you're dealing with. What percentage of companies are actually making changes to the way their offices are laid out, changing the layout, changing the structure, accommodating hoteling? What percentage of people are trying to just change people versus actually change the office? What do you think? What percentage of companies are making physical changes to their space?
I'd say it's about 50-50.
Really?
About the same for me as well. 50.
I would also echo that.
Yeah. I think with any degree of confidence, that's probably where it fits, yeah.
Wow, okay, so we've got half of the companies that, from our combined experience, which is a lot of firms, making the decision that they need to do things differently, and half of the companies saying, we're going to work on this. We're going to try and get people one way or another, you know, free sandwich Fridays and whatever else. All right. It's an interesting kind of situation. All right, so if a company does want to make that change, if they've decided that, all right, we have 10,000 employees, but we only need 1,000 desks, and we want to have beautiful. What's the first step? Is it the technology? Is it the office space layouts? What do you think is the first step that they should do to get them down that journey to adapt to the future? Go ahead. You look like you got an idea. Go.
All right, I'll go.
Any order.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the first step is always defining purpose. Like, why are you going to have people go to the office? Who's going to the office? Is it an engineering audience? Is it a sales audience? Are you doing team gathering events, all hands events? So being able to define purpose is going to then be able to help you design around the technology.
I think it's that human-centered design as well, right? What are the humans going in the office to do? What are they looking to achieve? And the spaces should map to that in some sort of percentage, right? And maybe even driving that human behavior as well. You want people to collaborate, you need to have collaboration spaces for them to do that. You want them to come in for town halls, you need the technology and the spaces to enable that. So really just taking a step back, ignoring previous floor plans and just going, what do we actually want this space to be used for? This is valuable square footage.
So for both of you, you're saying think it out. It really needs to, you can't just take a first step to buy something. You can't solve the problem with design. You have to really sit down and figure out what the purposes are you want to shoot for. Something we've been saying in this industry for more than 50 years, but that is the first step. Good.
I was just going to say, I think you even have to take another step back and not just look at the office.
A step back from stepping back.
Stepping back from stepping back, right? Because the office and what you do in the office is a piece of your whole digital enablement strategy. And if you're only looking at one piece of it, then you don't really see how that interacts with other pieces of it. And that's been a big shift, right? Because the people who might be responsible for what goes on in the office are not the same people who are responsible for like the human resource component of or the sales component of it. And there's so many pieces of the business that really should actually understand and care about these outcomes, and bringing those together is something that is a major shift in how we've thought about these things in the past.
Are we seeing more chief transformation officers? Mitch, are you running into people whose job this is?
Yeah, absolutely, and technology obviously is important. We're all here for a technology show, but the other thing I'm seeing is that purpose-built space. Some of the offices have specific rooms set up now, colors and textures and things, like some of the things that we had before the pandemic, but even more so now when you need that type of rest and relaxation type of space, or you need a space that's more for studying, or a space that's more for collaboration. The other thing in Cisco, we were talking earlier about some of the things you've done with your offices, these purposefully built spaces where you can have intentional accidents, where you have to bump into someone. You can't just sneak out of the office. You have to kind of wait. So I think those transformation offices looking at that. The other thing I've seen in one office that I really like is the window views. Just having these really nice natural views out the windows, which I might not have in my home. So making that space something different and something that you want to come to.
I would also just add on, when you were talking earlier about just the different groups to help make this decision, it's not just IT. So you're going to have real estate involved, and then really like your chief people officer. Like these are like employee design spaces. So making sure that it's a collaborative effort and it's not just, putting the technology and then thinking about the rest after the fact.
So we're all in the technology business. We're all selling parts and pieces and devices, and that's fine. But I think there's a push going on right now to try and make technology part of the design. It's no longer just I'm going to slap this on the table and slap this on the front wall and then hopefully find some place to run the wires. We now have to really think about how do we make the technology part of the experience of the space and of the way the company works. And I know Joel and Katie, both of your companies have technology that allow people to help understand where they'll be the next day in terms of hot desking and how to manage spaces. So what do we do, not just our four companies, how do we as technologists change the way we look at the space so that we can make our technology something that's part of the human experience, not just something we've slapped in at the 11th hour?
I think the workflow of all spaces, that experience from the moment you decide I'm going in the office today to when you leave and come back home again, and even at home, that human kind of experience through all of that needs to be taken into account. And what at the touch points, where are they getting involved with the technology? That happens so many times beyond just the four walls of a meeting room. And we really need to be thinking about that from the start to the finish when designing.
Yeah, and I think we learned a lot during the pandemic about what we did in our homes. So people went home and started using Zoom and started talking with grandma and grandpa on a TV screen with a camera in the room. And I think you had a slide this morning, Amelia, with where the collaboration space was actually couches. And I think if we start thinking about the purpose of the room, is this room a conference board type of room, then there's going to be a certain type of table and chairs. Is this more of open space innovation type of speak, then maybe softer chairs and some other type of technology that can come in and come out might benefit that space a little bit more. But really take a look at the space and what type of work is taking place there and what might take place at different times of the day. These rooms are not for one purpose anymore either. There might be something in the morning that's very different from the afternoon.
I always think technology should also be the supporting actor, right? You don't want to have that be the main focus of the room. You want to have the focus of the room being the people that you're with, the content of the meeting. The technology is like that. It's in the background where it's easy to use, it's seamless, and it enhances the experience, not something that is overly complicated or you're having to think about how to use it.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's why it has to be designed and looked at and approached from a very holistic experience, because otherwise you just start slapping this here and you might solve the problem of how do I get my content up on the screen, but you haven't created an environment where anybody actually feels comfortable sharing content because the room isn't really designed for that. It's not very collaborative. So,
are we seeing hot desking, hoteling working? Are we seeing companies able to really manage that? My team, my 4 or 5 people, we've all decided to come in this Thursday, and we're all getting desks next to each other. And is the concept working, or are we still struggling through it?
I'm not personally really seeing it. I think I saw more hoteling before the pandemic when you had a phone and you wanted your extension on that phone, so you would dial in your extension and then you would use that phone. Now there's no phone on the desk, so I've got my cell phone. I just need a table. So I see more and more people sharing spaces. Like it might be my desk 4 times a week, but on the 5th day you could sit without asking or logging in or anything like that. So I'm really not seeing it right now.
Anyone else?
I would say the one thing that I do like about our Cisco endpoints is we do have the occupancy sensors. So from a data and analytics perspective, a lot of times when we do design of our buildings, we're able to understand data and trends within a room, whether it's hoteling or whether you're actually in a conference room. We can see even if the endpoint isn't turned on, is there people in that room? How are they using that space with that because of the sensor capabilities? So with that knowledge, though, of the hoteling and stuff, we are able to see, with the occupancy sensor, how many people are utilizing the desks.
And you got also, Cisco also has, not to talk about Cisco, but you've got sensor capability, Cisco Spaces. You can monitor who's in the room, you can monitor the light and adjust the lighting in the room. There's a whole back-end cloud technology around that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We're able to use our wireless access points in conjunction with our devices. So we have the wayfinding capabilities to get you where you need to go, and then we're also able to tell just movement throughout the building of, those areas that you can bump into people at.
And that's data that companies can use as to what spaces they need, which ones they want. We're starting to see more of that emerge onto the market from a number of providers. I know you guys have used room sensors for a long time, right?
Yeah, and we're, from a hoteling or hot desking point of view, we really are seeing, there is the data side of it is super important for real estate. There's typically less space for most companies today as they consolidate down and be more efficient. So they want to make sure that's used well. From an end user's perspective, I totally agree that you now have your laptop or your phone. It has Teams, it has Zoom, it has WebEx on it. You don't need a phone. You maybe don't need your stuff there. You're happy to work from anywhere. So it's about just making sure those spaces, when I book it, as I'm taking my commute in, is available when I get there and reserved for me, and then I can do the work I need to do. And that data then lets real estate know how many spaces are needed, or what people, how long they're sitting there, what they're doing with them. I think all that becomes super important.
Okay, well, let's take the last few minutes here and talk about some of the specific items that your company, and it's not a product pitch, but there are technologies and devices and systems that you're coming out with to meet these needs that are different, that are changing the way the world's going to work. And I'd love you to describe, not say here's my product, buy it, but what are some of those technologies that people can expect to see either just on the market or coming to the market where it'll really help us with some of these problems? Mitch, you want to start? We'll go down the line.
Sure. I mean, from a Canon perspective, they're still looking at their heritage of, or their history of imagery. You think of Canon, you think of the cameras, you think of imagery. So they're trying to figure out how do we bring some of that into these meetings. We all show slides, we all have digital content, but how do we show the physical aspects of a room, the shape of a speaker or the texture on a chair, whatever it might be that you want to show in that room. So they're trying to figure that out so that it does feel like you're in the room. And when you're not in the room, you kind of miss that space because you're used to that. So that's one of the things that Canon's been very focused on, and I think you see some of that out here as well with some of the technologies that are there today, kind of giving you different viewpoints in the room, different angles. AI is certainly going to be a big part of this as well.
Okay, great. What's Crestron doing?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of interest in things like our multi-camera solutions at the moment and embedding AI into that as well. So again, high impact, larger spaces, they bring a certain challenge with making people feel like they're connected when they have a remote experience in looking into that room. So having those cameras be able to be at different angles in the room, but always peak optimum for the person, no matter where they're facing, targeting and framing on their head so they're always centered in the shot. Really bringing that AI aspect into that multi-camera is really a big interest point, and I think
are you showing any of that here on the floor, the multi-camera? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we do have the cameras over there, our One Beyond cameras, and we have some videos to show people.
Okay, so people should go take a look at that. Katie?
Yeah, AI. So same thing with us. We have a lot of camera development. We actually have specific software engineers that are dedicated towards audio AI, not just the visual experience, but also that audio experience, and something where we're also working on where you have that almost like an in-room movie production where the camera is automatically, going to that active speaker in a natural way. So definitely a lot of investment.
That's called cinematic?
Yes, yeah, our cross view, yeah, absolutely. And then I guess the other thing I would say that's very top of mind for Cisco is just the analytics aspect. All of our endpoints have sensors in them, whether it's humidity, occupancy, LiDAR, radar, toxic gas. We're able to get a lot of snapshot of what's going on in your environment, and so it's always important for us to be able to have all of that data so then we can work with facility management and actually show how those rooms are being used for the function that it was designed for.
And we've got some Cisco desk endpoints over at the IMCCA booth in the front. If you want to go take a look, they're really kind of cool. You can't break them, you just touch them and see how they work. And Amelia, what's QSC doing?
Yeah, so I mean, QSC, we have our roots in audio, right? So that's been really what we've done for a long time. And we've, as we've developed QSys and our control platform, audio is still as important as ever, especially as you get into these larger spaces. Maybe in the smaller spaces, the sort of simple video bars, got you covered. But, as you get into larger spaces and high-impact spaces, which are generally larger spaces, but could also be really mission-critical spaces of any size, we're really focusing on, developing that audio to be an excellent experience for that space, and also the control of that space, because there could be additional elements you need to be able to control outside of, like, again, what you need in your basic huddle space. And so that's where our QSys platform plays into all that. The other side of the area, which AI, right, is our Vision Suite product, where we're actually able to, take a look at the people within the room and more or less like map them out by, essentially we're seeing the skeletal, creation of that structure, and being able to then, allow cameras to do certain things to ensure that the people who are speaking in the room are actually the ones that are coming on camera, or being able to be seen on the screen for a larger space and things of that nature. So a lot of development going on there. Again, to make these spaces great experiences, places people want to come back to.
Thank you, Mitch from Canon, Joel from Crestron, Katie from Cisco, Amelia from QSC or QSys, whichever one you want to do. I've got everybody's email address up there. I'm sure you don't mind if people reach out to you on email or on LinkedIn. I'm David Danto at TalkingPointz. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.